Today, I'm talking about AI and not just doom and gloom artificial general intelligence and how supercomputers are going to take over the world. No, I recently read Karen Howe's of AI, and it's a book that looks more at AI companies than AI as a technology, which was a refreshing take and one that I really enjoyed. So, this channel, yes, it's mostly science fiction fantasy reviews, but I do read, yes, a ton of business books. And that note, this did feel most like a business book than a technology book, which was again a refreshing take. So, what this book is Karen Howe is an investigative journalist with MIT, or at least started with MIT book review, or I'm totally messing this up. But yes, she worked and investigated OpenAI as a company way back in the day. And this book does blend a bit of both. So it's both a look at OpenAI as a company and a bit about Sam Altman. And the reason why she does this is because the two are so intertwined. So it was interesting to get a look behind the scenes a bit on Sam Altman and how he rose from the ranks. It's not like a total biography, but how he rose up and became the head of Y Combinator, and that ecosystem of these startups and VCs investing in each other and working together sort of shaped his belief, I guess you could say, in how companies should operate. Definitely see that now in, I'm recording this in 2026. So how there's this AI bubble, or at least talk about AI bubble, but an AI circular economy, and how OpenAI gets a big investment from Nvidia and then buys Nvidia chips, and then Microsoft invests, and then Microsoft also uses OpenAI, and yeah, how it's all kind of a circular investing cycle of AI. And what this all ties into, and what the thesis of the book is that they're actually building empires, and how that's not so great of a thing. So she doesn't necessarily say AGI or AI itself is bad, which is good. She sort of says that companies are bad. So it's a different take on the AI hype and AI boom bubble cycle that we're in right now in 2026. So what I liked is that, yeah, this idea of empires and how she goes into examples of investigative examples of how this empire is more of a consolidation of power. So yes, I mentioned the sort of bubble and circular economy, which Altman sort of developed at Y Combinator, where one startup would use the services of another startup, and that would use another startup. It was an ecosystem of sort of who knew who and what cohort you were in these Y Combinator companies, and that's exactly what he's doing with OpenAI. And this consolidation of resources where they're sucking up resources like data, but also talent and computing power, which is kind of the three pillars of the book that she sort of goes into a deep dive. Some interesting things from the academia side that I enjoyed was how the AI research industry has sort of coalesced around OpenAI and OpenAI's vision for what AI is, because they're the largest and sort of monolith, and how they sort of brought all the attention around AI to the public. So companies, or not public companies, but researchers really have started tailoring their research is the word I'm looking for, specifically to what AI is looking for. So AI sort of went all in on machine learning in the GPT model, but she does present that there were, at the time before ChatGPT launched, there were competing ideas for how AGI, as the eventual goal, would be developed. But Sam Altman's vision was a very specific one of machine learning and reinforcement learning as the best way to train artificial intelligence and to grow at all costs, which leads to the other sort of pillar of empire is the consolidation of resources, and how OpenAI in this circular investing is going all in on buying computing power. And that was seen as the growth at all costs maxim that OpenAI sort of lives by, that they were going to get the best model by just training the most data. And that sort of drove the company to just continually invest in more GPUs, more processing power, and the more data would lead to bigger and better models. And that philosophy is growth at all costs, despite the human and other side, not benefits, but side casualties in this empire building cycle. So another interesting thing in the book is where Hal will go deep into one subject. So she leans on her investigative journalism style, and while we're learning about the company, she sort of takes a sidetrack, which a little bit threw me off in the book, where we learn, like, for example, the human element, and she'll do like a little montage story of the workers that are directly affected by this. So she chronicles and spotlights these humans that do RLHF, reinforcement learning by human feedback, which is the common way to train models nowadays. Where, so if you didn't know that, yes, there is a computing element involved, but then humans reinforce that training. So that's a reinforcement learning through human feedback. So the humans are actually evaluating the model and sort of aligning it the right way, that yes, this is the way we should go. This is how a human would talk or would reason. So this human aspect is done through the lowest bidder. So it is outsourced to a lot of these third world countries. And she shows that it provides a lot of value to these third world countries, but as also at a cost. Because if something goes wrong for these workers, like she follows this story of one worker, and then the company just switches to another provider by getting blacklisted, and it's sort of, yeah, it ruined the entire economy and the people that relied on this work, this computer work, for their livelihood. And just the whims of these techno companies from the west, from Silicon Valley companies, like destroying whole like ecosystems that I guess maybe invested too heavily into doing RLHF work as a livelihood. And it's sort of, yeah, these human elements. And then the other element is the environmental element. So she also talks about how, as we probably all know, if you're following AI, data centers are such a big thing in resources. And she chronicles, and I keep saying chronicles, but she tells the story or does reporting on how, like water, for example, which I didn't understand totally, but now after reading this, I do, and how these data centers also need potable water, which is drinking water. When you hear, yes, that, yeah, everything needs water cooled, but because the water has to filter through these systems so many times, it has to be the purest form. So that is, of course, potable drinking water. And that is directly siphoning resources from the areas and surrounding areas where these data centers are being built. How these companies are building empire and striking deals with local jurisdictions to get their data centers built, but it's having downstream consequences on siphoning these natural resources to build data centers, which again loops back to the overall theme of building this empire and OpenAI's sort of mission driven by Altman of growth at all costs. So it's a bleak look at the companies, but not so much at AI itself. So she doesn't really go into AI is good or bad, that AI is going to like, destroy humanity like other books, but this sort of data colonialism or techno feudalism you've heard thrown around. And I also read about this in Yuval Harari's Nexus, where he talks about a data colonialism and but Western countries going for like third world countries to get the next frontier of data. In Nexus, one of the examples I think was Meta, where like, yes, Facebook, once you acquire all the users in like the first world countries like United States, Europe, obviously the next where place that they can expand is countries, third world countries, and how Meta expanded to the smaller countries and then caused problems by introducing social media there. But this is also similar here, where these AI companies have trained on all the data available on the internet, and there's only so much data, and they've almost reached the end of it. So they're looking to expand their data, expand their resources, natural resources, expand their human worker pool to these other countries, and how they just control resources as these empire building entities like OpenAI and other AI startups. And she balances this also by continuously telling the story of OpenAI and how to bring it up to kind of modern times. This, she starts way early in like 2019, but to bring modern times, we've heard, yes, about the story of how Sam Altman got ousted from the board. So she does go into sort of the splits in the corporate, not espionage, but the corporate drama or struggles of aligning the vision of how OpenAI was a nonprofit, and then it had to align to a commercial entity, mainly because Altman's vision was growth at all costs, and there was no way to continue growing and without getting some more funding. So with yes, without turning a profit, and how OpenAI went from a research institution into, yes, now a for-profit entity. So she does chronicle that whole shift in rift in the company. So if any, there was one takeaway from me from this was that maybe I did buy into the hype, and maybe bought into the corporate storytelling and PR that OpenAI can do no harm, but this really does expose some of the other controversies that have flared up here and there that, yes, I read a ton of AI news. And yeah, I think I've read all this at one point or the other, but by Karen Howe really putting it all together in, yes, in a well reported and investigative journalist style, it really connects all the dots. And it doesn't, yes, it doesn't paint Altman in the greatest light because he is more a seller and a storyteller, which I think the counterpoint is, even though she's kind of harsh, like maybe kind of is a light word, but even though she's harsh on Altman, I think Altman is the only person that could have got OpenAI to the point it has. So that's my, yes, counterpoint take on this, that yes, he is a showman and a seller, but that's what you need for a VC company. And that is the only way that they've grown by, yes, he sort of learned this trade in Y Combinator and selling the ideal of VCs on these startups. And he took that kind of growth ethos and growth ideology to OpenAI, which had turned it obviously into a massive success. If you look at from maybe a startup idea, that yes, OpenAI was a startup and it's achieved, yes, stellar success and growth. But maybe I think if other like a future thing would be, okay, maybe it's Altman's time to step down because he has grown the company, but he is the spokesperson and, yeah, the poster child of the AI revolution in modern times, 24, 25, 26. But again, she sort of leaves it open to interpretation of, is that's a good or bad thing? And I would say it was good in the sense that his vision and that singular focus, along with the people around him, got us to where we are and really advanced the field. Yes, OpenAI as a company has sort of strayed from its roots of being a pure research institution and a startup for the public good. For, again, the OpenAI was supposed to be open research, and now it's become something different. As maybe, as she rightly probably points out, that some of this maybe stardom has gotten to their heads, or that they're just swimming and not really knowing what to do either, and they're just making the best of a situation. She does leave the kind of open ended, but you can tell kind of her thoughts of how she frames some of these stories of kind of where she wants the reader to go. But overall, yes, I would recommend this. I thought it was really interesting, and it's one of my favorite maybe AI books I've read recently. Maybe it's not favorite because I've read a ton recently, and I have been reading more like biographies of specific people, and this was a mix of a little bit of Altman, but a little bit of the company. So I wouldn't say it's specifically just about Sam Altman. It's more about the company as an entity. But then she does, yeah, sprinkle in these stories about wider issues of things happening in the world around it. So it's hard to call it just a biography of one thing, other than just it's a story of OpenAI and how it's interwoven with Altman and other external factors. So that was my thoughts. Again, I think you should check it out if you're interested in AI, because it just gives you, again, a different perspective, and it helped me cut through the noise of corporate PR. So I enjoyed my time with Karen Howe's Open Empire of AI, and hope you do too. So thanks for watching this video, and have a great one. See ya.